Hey guys, reading for tonight 505 to 506 and page 508. 505 to 506 and 508. 3 pages, guys. All right, so we're going to jump right into notes today. So if you have your notes, please pull those out and let's get going. So many will resort to selling apples. Many people, especially the wealthy, realize that people need food in the city, and the cheapest food you can get around is apples at this time. There was a big giant bumper crop of apples that year, and so they would get apples. They'd buy apples for like 3 cents an apple, and then they would sell it for 5 or 6 cents an apple. And once again, you could turn that into a little meal for yourself and maybe even a friend. The Red Cross, letter D, the Red Cross, the city government, and other charitable organizations, including mobsters like Al Capone, considered, and by the way, his was considered one of the best. Al Capone's bread line was considered one of the best. Work to feed and shelter the unemployed. So even people like old Al Capone, the bad, nasty, mean mobster, had something called a bread line. So, what are bread lines? Bread lines provide bread, soup, and water for someone who is in need of a free meal. So, they would provide water, fresh water, soup, and bread. But Al Capone, the thing that people said about Al Capone was he'd throw vegetables and meat into his soup. A lot of times this soup is very, very thin soup, but Al Capone's never so. Shantytowns called Hoovervilles, after the president, called Hoovervilles, were made out of spare lumber and spring up outside of the cities or towns. And in your notes, it's like they're little shacks. So shantytowns called Hoovervilles start made out of spare lumber, spring up out on the outskirts of many towns. And these are just little shacks, and so you'll have whole shack cities. Obviously, people are blaming the president for their tough times. Roman numeral 6, farmers face tough decisions. Farmers decide the only way to survive, the only way that they're going to survive, is if they start destroying their surplus. We've talked about this all year, guys. The biggest problem that farmers have is they have too much food. They make too much food. So they make the decision to start destroying it. So you can see here in your notes this picture of a group of milk farmers. And what are they doing? They're dumping the milk out in protest. By the way, this gets played on movie reels that get sent back to the cities. And in the cities, of course, people are like starving to death. And they're watching as these farmers out on the farms are destroying all this food that they could eat. But of course, once again, the reason why they're not selling this food is because the people can't afford to buy it. So that's why the farmers have to end up destroying it. When farmers fail to pay their loans back and the banks begin to foreclose on the farmers' farms. So when the farmers don't pay back their loans, like we've said all along, then what always happens is the banks come and foreclose on the farmers' farms. Now, an interesting thing happens. Many of the farmers' neighbors will try to save the farmers' farms and their equipment at auctions. What they'll do is they'll buy the farms at the lowest prices that the auctioneer will sell it, and then sell it back to the farmers for a few dollars, maybe $1, maybe a couple dollars. Now, granted, this land probably at this point is probably going for $400 an acre, but only $2 or less now. By the way, in some cases, neighbors will band together and drive away the auctioneers and the sheriff. In some neighborhoods, they'll band together and drive away the auctioneers and the sheriff. Mexican migrants who have been providing cheap labor since, remember, once again, because of our immigration laws, they're allowed to be able to come to the United States. Well, now these people who've lost all their jobs need jobs. So the jobs that they didn't want because they didn't pay enough money, well, now all of a sudden now those jobs look really good, and they don't want to compete with the Mexicans. So Mexican migrants are pressured to leave the nation. The Mexican farmers are pressured to leave the nation. Entertainment during the Depression. Letter A. Reading and playing cards at home were the top forms of entertainment. Also, that was at the top there, along with this, is these new things called board games. Games that you need a board to play with. Interesting gentleman by the name of Charles Darrow is an unemployed real estate agent from Atlantic City, New Jersey. Charles Darrow is an unemployed real estate agent from Atlantic City, New Jersey. So he comes up with an idea. He's going to create a game where you go around the board, it's a board game, and you start buying up property that you would find in Atlantic City, New Jersey. So you would buy things like, oh goodness, oh gosh, I can't remember the spaces now. I'm Atlantic, and of course the famous one, Boardwalk. Of course, if you know those couple spots, as well as utilities and waterworks, you know that the game that he created was Monopoly. So Mr. Darrow will create this game called Monopoly, and everybody and their brother will want to play this Monopoly game. Last thing for the day, crossword puzzles and card games also become very popular. Crossword puzzles and card games also become very popular. So if you ever have wondered why your grandparents and maybe your parents today play a lot of card games, is because especially your grandparents or maybe even your great-grandparents, that's something that was a favorite thing to do during the Depression, and that's why they played so many card games. All right? So, remember, read pages 505 to 506 and page 508. And don't forget, make sure you keep on looking at that review. Get some looks at it, and definitely look over your notes before you take the quest on Friday. All right, guys. I'll see ya. Bye.